Eucerin has recently released their Radiant Tone Collection. This is a line of products specifically designed to help fight unwanted pigmentation in the skin. This is an area where we're always looking for better treatments, and Eucerin may have nailed it here. I'm going to be reviewing these products today that have been available in Europe for a much longer period of time, and I first became aware of them after seeing people post their before and afters on the skincare addiction subreddit. You can see some of these before and afters here. As we look at people using them for 3 to 4 months, the results are pretty impressive for the reduction of pigmentation. This is something that I believe is effective for melasma and for post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. Now, in addition to covering the specific products today, I will be talking about Thiamidol, the active ingredient in this line, exactly how it works and how does it compare to hydroquinone, kojic acid, and arbutin, the things that we commonly turn to in the treatment of melasma and pigmentation. I'm also going to touch on some sensitivity and safety concerns, if there are any, because if you're using a new product, you want to know if it is safe to use, not just is it effective. And lastly, before we dive in, this is not sponsored. Eucerin did send me the products for free, but I'm not being paid to review them today. I want to dive into the science and show you how they work and if they're going to be right for you, where you can purchase them at. Let's start with the products themselves. The first step in the routine is going to be the Radiant Tone Cleansing Gel. Now, this does not contain the active ingredient Thiamidol. This is an AHA cleanser with lactic acid and glycolic acid together at 2%. This is meant to gently exfoliate the skin, and then your topical products theoretically should penetrate and work better. Now, you can see in my video using this, it lathers really well. I've used this for a couple of weeks now, and I haven't experienced any dryness either long-term or immediately after using the product. It does not leave my skin feeling dry, tight, or squeaky clean. Just a nice, refreshing clean and still feeling hydrated. Now, the next step in the routine is going to be the Radiant Tone Dual Serum. This is meant to be used morning and evening, and it does contain the active ingredient of Thiamidol. So we're going to talk about the mechanism of Thiamidol here in a moment, but in the morning time, you would put this on and then you would be using the SPF. Now, the SPF you can see here in my video, it is a chemical SPF. It does contain Thiamidol and it blends in really nicely with the skin. It leaves a sheer finish. For a moment, I was worried that it was going to cake up in my beard, but as I continued to rub it in, I didn't have any issues with leaving a white cast on my skin or having just that white gunk in my beard that some of the sunscreens will leave. Now, in the nighttime routine, you can again use the dual serum and then follow that up with the Night Moisturizer. So this moisturizer also contains Thiamidol, and it's important to note that Eucerin advises only using their products up to 4 times a day. So if you're using the serum morning and evening, and the SPF in the morning and the moisturizer at night, those are your 4 applications for the day, and I wouldn't be using more than that. When you start putting it on more, theoretically, there is the risk of irritation. And again, we're going to touch on all the safety concerns here in a moment. The line does contain an eye cream specifically designed for those that have dark circles under the eyes, and it does contain Thiamidol. I didn't really try that out myself. I don't generally use a lot of eye creams, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it today. So let's get at the mechanism of action of Thiamidol and exactly how this works. Similar to hydroquinone, it inhibits the tyrosinase enzyme. You can see this pathway here on the screen. This is how our body produces melanin inside the melanocytes of our skin. We start with the amino acid tyrosine, and it goes through the tyrosinase enzyme to become L-DOPA, and it goes through the tyrosinase enzyme again to become dopaquinone. So many of the treatments that we have for hyperpigmentation have focused on this enzyme tyrosinase, because if we can inhibit its activity, we will be stopping the production of pigment. Now, hydroquinone has been the classic and considered the gold standard treatment for pigment reduction. Now, hydroquinone has its own problems. It can cause ochronosis, which is a permanent pigment deposition in the skin. People have found this out the hard way by using really high strengths of hydroquinone for long periods of time. Because it is cellularly toxic to the melanocytes, it ends up causing a permanent pigment to be left in the skin. The only way to get rid of this, which isn't even always effective, is it has to be lasered and broken up like laser tattoo removal. Hydroquinone also can lead to a lot of irritation in individuals, and I'm going to compare that to Thiamidol when we get into the safety. Now, kojic acid and arbutin also impact the tyrosinase enzyme. In the clinical studies, arbutin and kojic acid have never been shown to be as effective as hydroquinone. So when Thiamidol was being studied, it was studied at a 0.2% as compared to 4% hydroquinone. 4% hydroquinone is only available by prescription, and it is kind of considered the gold standard for melasma and hyperpigmentation. What they found is that the 0.2% Thiamidol was as effective as 4% hydroquinone, and that is really excellent results, because when we get into the safety, you'll see Thiamidol was way better tolerated than hydroquinone. Thiamidol was not studied against higher concentrations of hydroquinone as far as I could find in my research. Thiamidol also wasn't studied against combinations of hydroquinone and kojic acid. I've used that combination as a compounded prescription for my patients in the clinic for years and seen really excellent results with a higher concentration of hydroquinone and kojic acid together, with actually niacinamide as well. But it is important to remember that because of that risk of ochronosis, that permanent pigment deposition, we can't use hydroquinone for more than about 3 months at a time before you have to take a break for 3 or 4 months, which always leads to the question from my patients, what do I do during that time where I'm taking a break from hydroquinone? And this is where we've been reaching for cysteamine and other pigment inhibitors that just work differently. And some of those have been historically pretty expensive. You have to be wearing sunscreen in your routine as well. So I think Thiamidol gives us a really good option. If you still want to use hydroquinone, what are you going to do during those breaks? And if you don't want to use hydroquinone, Thiamidol is safe to use for extended periods of time. Now that we've essentially established the efficacy of Thiamidol as effective as 4% hydroquinone, I want to touch on the safety considerations here. When it was studied against hydroquinone, there were no cases of severe irritation. Now, it is possible to become allergic to this. It was never severe, but anything that we're putting on our skin, a very small percentage of people could become allergic to. So that is a risk with Thiamidol, but it is incredibly small in the trials that were conducted. And again, there were no cases of severe irritation. It didn't cause anybody to drop out of the study. There were slight complaints of itching. I've used the products and I didn't experience that whatsoever. And importantly, in these studies, it was found to be safe and effective for all skin types, from Fitzpatrick 1 up through 6. So regardless of your skin type, you can safely use Thiamidol without the risk of significant adverse effects or uneven depigmentation of the skin. In the studies of Thiamidol, they were typically conducted up through about 24 weeks, and during that time there were no cases of ochronosis or severe irritation, and people have been using these for much longer than 24 weeks after they've been released onto the market. And again, we're not seeing any post-consumer reports of severe irritation or of the ochronosis, that permanent deposition. And really, based on the way that Thiamidol works, it is not toxic to the melanocytes. It should not be mechanistically leaving ochronosis in the skin the way that hydroquinone has a risk of doing. Now, with some of the products that we put on our skin for pigmentation or otherwise, things like hydroquinone or retinol, we know that they can make us more sensitive to ultraviolet rays. So Thiamidol was tested for phototoxicity and photosensitivity, and it was not found to increase sensitivity to UV rays. So that is a very good thing, meaning this is safe to use year-round. When it comes to treating melasma, many people first experience melasma during pregnancy because melasma has a huge hormonal component to it, and hydroquinone is not considered safe to use in pregnancy. Importantly, Thiamidol has no known reproductive toxicity. Now, I will tell you that it was not specifically studied in pregnancy because this is an over-the-counter topical treatment, and no company is going to specifically go test that in pregnancy or breastfeeding. But based on the laboratory studies, if animal studies were done, there's no known reproductive toxicity, and it is generally considered safe to use in pregnancy. But if you are pregnant or breastfeeding and you have melasma or hyperpigmentation, I would always recommend that you talk to your obstetrician or your child's pediatrician to see if this would be safe for you. I'm not giving you the green light to use it there, but I am telling you that based on the studies, it is considered safe. So essentially at this point, we've talked about the efficacy of Thiamidol. It is over the counter, and we've talked about the safety of Thiamidol. It is much safer and less irritating than things like hydroquinone, more effective than kojic acid or arbutin. I think this represents a really excellent option if you have hyperpigmentation that you're wanting to treat. Now, some things you have to be aware of. You cannot treat hyperpigmentation if you are not committed to wearing sunscreen every day. So I am really glad that Eucerin developed a formula with SPF just to make it really easy. You get the active ingredient of Thiamidol and you get UV protection. If you have persistent hyperpigmentation, you should not be relying on one sunscreen application a day though. And remember that Eucerin does say you shouldn't be using these more than 4 times a day. So the question that leaves me with is, what are you supposed to use outside of this routine when you need to reapply your sunscreen? And again, I would just recommend that you find an SPF that you like to use and make sure that you're reapplying. Use those wide-brimmed hats. You need to protect yourself from the sun, from blue light even in some cases if you're particularly sensitive. So those are all things to be aware of. You have to be using sunscreen and you want to be using something that specifically reduces pigmentation. Thiamidol represents that. They do come with the sunscreen, but find another sunscreen. I'll link the UV Daily from EltaMD down in the video description as well, just so you have another option. If you want to purchase these products, I will have links down in the video description. You can find them there. If you are the type that likes to walk into a brick and mortar store, they are available at Ulta. That's where I found them, in my local Ulta, and they were right up in the front on a big display. As with anything from Eucerin, the prices are very reasonable. This is not like a drunk elephant where you're spending hundreds of dollars on every single product. I'm really glad that Eucerin finally released these into the US market, giving my patients and giving you another option for the treatment of unwanted pigmentation. Guys, thanks for hanging in with me on this video. Remember that when you like, comment, and subscribe, or you purchase products through the links that I offer in my video description, it supports my mission to provide free dermatology care to underserved populations in my mobile clinic. So thank you for that. You're helping me to do something that I love and that people need desperately. If you guys like this, share it with somebody, and I'll see you on the next video.